Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're stepping into the shadows of a massive digital uprising. It's honestly like watching a political thriller unfold right in front of us. We're going to see how a single passing courtroom remark accidentally birthed a full-blown satirical rebellion in India, the rise of the Cockroach Janta Party. You know, this isn't just another story about some fleeting internet memes. It's a real-time documentary of an entire generation's simmering frustration finally boiling over. So let's set the scene. May 15th, 2026. It's a Supreme Court hearing about fake law degrees. Out of nowhere, Chief Justice Surya Kant delivers these exact words. Some youth are like cockroaches who don't get jobs, then become media, social media, and RTI activists to attack everyone. Now, this was a remark made in a very specific context, but we all know how the internet works, right? In the digital age, words are highly volatile. Well, the reaction online was instantaneous and absolutely visceral. Frustrated youth, activists, students, they didn't back down. Instead, they leaned right in. Platforms like X and Instagram were suddenly flooded with these dark, highly satirical memes. The hashtag cockroach started trending nationwide. People were bitterly joking, saying, "Oh, I guess asking for a job makes me a cockroach now." Others were quipping that filing a right to information request was suddenly a branch of entomology. I mean, it was a masterclass in weaponized sarcasm. Now, to be fair, we have to note that the Chief Justice did issue a clarification later on. He stated very clearly that his target was absolutely not unemployed youth, but specifically those individuals using fake degrees to game the system. He even emphasized that India's youth are the pillars of the nation. But the reality of digital protest is completely unforgiving. The internet's court had already passed its verdict. As far as they were concerned, the insult had already landed squarely on the shoulders of the disillusioned, and no clarification was going to put that genie back in the bottle. Picture this. Thousands of miles away in Boston, a student named Abhijit Dipske is watching all this outrage unfold on his screen. Caught somewhere between deep anger and heavy irony, he just drops this single, furious tweet. What if all the cockroaches comes together? He had literally no idea he was about to ignite a digital revolution. It was just one sentence, acting as a flare in the dark for thousands of people. And the timeline here? It is terrifyingly fast. Just 48 hours. That's all it took. From the Supreme Court comment and that viral tweet on May 15th, the response was so overwhelming that by the very next day, May 16th, an official website was up and running. By the 18th, they were holding massive online gatherings. Think about that for a second. This wasn't some slow, tedious grassroots movement. This was a bitter internet joke, mutating into a highly organized entity practically overnight. Within mere hours of that initial tweet, the group actually deployed an AI-generated website, and their chosen tagline? Completely unapologetic voice of the lazy and unemployed. This was the official launch of the Cockroach Janta Party. It was this dark, cynical branding that perfectly captured the mood of an entire generation that felt entirely discarded by the system. What's brilliant here is how deeply subversive their strategy was. They adopted the familiar grand constitutional pillars, secular, socialist, democratic, but then they just tacked on the word lazy. For perhaps the very first time in Indian political history, laziness was weaponized as an official satirical ideology. By embracing the very labels used to dismiss them, they stripped those labels of their power, turning them into a mirror to reflect what they saw as the establishment's arrogance. But wait, beneath that heavy layer of satire, their messaging carried a seriously sharp anti-corruption bite. Their platform stated bluntly, and I quote, "We are not here to make a second PM Cares nor to tour Davos on tax money. We are just asking where the money went." They were directly challenging the political elite on basic accountability. The joke was just the hook, right? The demand for transparency was the actual payload. Let's look at the numbers, because the growth was an explosive chain reaction. Within hours, boom, over 300 highly engaged followers. Then the algorithm just caught fire. The movement skyrocketed to over 100,000 followers within that exact same tense 48-hour window. It was like a massive, collective digital exhale. And most shockingly, this wasn't just passive doom scrolling. Over 500 official memberships were secured practically overnight. That kind of traction draws eyes, and it immediately grabbed the attention of prominent political figures and members of parliament. What started as an edgy meme had violently crashed right into the mainstream. Now, if you wanted to join this digital tribe, you had to meet a hilariously grim set of criteria. You had to be unemployed, whether by force, by choice, or out of principle. You had to be physically lazy. You had to be chronically online for at least 11 hours a day. And finally, you had to be a professional ranter, provided, of course, that your rants were true and sharp. They took these societal taunts and wore them as an absolute badge of honor. But here's where the joke completely vanishes. They actually released a manifesto, and it was a direct 5-point systemic attack on the Indian political and corporate elite. Listen to this. A total ban on any Chief Justice moving to the upper house post-retirement, invoking draconian anti-terror laws against election commissioners if voters are deleted, strict 50% reservation for women in parliament, canceling the media licenses of massive corporate conglomerates, and a 20-year election ban for political defectors. That is pure, undiluted anger directed right at the structural flaws of the system. All this simmering tension, it finally boiled over on May 18th during an online meeting they named the Rochak Satsang, a really dark play on the word cockroach. Thousands of youth gathered in this digital space, and they weren't just sharing memes anymore. They were venting genuine, deep-rooted, systemic despair. They openly discussed devastating exam paper leaks, crushing unemployment, relentless inflation, and a profound, paralyzing mistrust of the entire political machine. If we step back and look at this impartially, we have to recognize exactly what founder Abhijit Dipke realized during that meeting. The digital sarcasm, the memes, the whole cockroach identity, it's merely a coping mechanism. This is not just a meme. It's the roar of a deeply disillusioned demographic, traumatized by immense education loss during COVID-19, staring down shrinking job markets, and repeatedly victimized by relentless exam paper leaks that literally steal their futures. Yet, despite all that raw anger, the party quickly established some very clear boundaries in an official statement. They declared, "We believe in the Constitution. They will try to prove us antisocial, but we will question the system's flaws democratically." They made it fundamentally clear that, while they absolutely represent venomous digital dissent, they are not a violent mob. Their rebellion remains strictly anchored within democratic limits. Which leaves us with this final, lingering thought for our explainer today. We've just watched the internet take a passing, misunderstood insult and forge it into a massive, highly organized political manifesto in exactly 48 hours. The speed and scale of that are just breathtaking. And honestly, it serves as a massive warning sign for democracies worldwide. If an entire generation feels completely ignored, and if simply asking questions about their own future earns them the label of a pest, what exactly happens to the political machine when the swarm finally decides to unite?